The floorboards creaked ominously as I stepped onto them. I could feel the settling of the old house around me, and I wasn't sure if that was the wind or something else rustling the dead leaves outside. My flashlight swept across the dusty furniture and debris littering the room. Cobwebs brushed against my face, and I swatted at them blindly. I was almost done. All that was left was this corner. I just had to get past all of these boxes stacked precariously in the gloom, and then I could finally leave the attic. It had been 2 days since I'd started sorting through my late aunt's things, and I was ready for it to be over. My aunt had passed away suddenly from an aneurysm. She'd been 53. I never knew her very well. We only saw each other on major royal occasions. She'd been really private, so no one had ever been up here until now. I was close with my cousin, though. We were only 3 years apart. She was the only person who understood how confusing and lonely it must have been growing up in a castle with so much responsibility thrust upon you at such a young age. I remembered when I was 10 and she was 13, our parents had brought us along to some event or other. We were staying in a hotel room while the adults talked business, and we got into a massive fight. I don't even remember what it was about, but afterwards, I remember lying on the floor, hugging my knees to my chest, and watching the rain on the window. That's when she came over, sat down next to me, and told me that it would be okay. For a moment, I felt seen, like someone finally understood me, and I felt grateful for that, even if it only lasted for a few minutes before our parents burst in and started yelling at us to get ready for bed. As I grew older, I realized that she wasn't perfect. She had problems. It wasn't always easy being the princess. It came with a lot of sacrifices, and people's expectations of her meant that she often had to put others before herself. Sometimes she would call me in the middle of the night, crying because she didn't know what to do or who to turn to. I always told her she could rely on me. I wish I could have done more. We spent a lot of time together after her engagement to Callum broke off. Apparently, he cheated on her with a guy. She confided in me about how devastated she'd been and how she thought her life was over. But you know what? That made me angry. So angry. She deserved the world, not some cheap consolation prize. So when I heard about Prince Philip, I was elated. My aunt was going to marry a kind, genuine man who wouldn't hurt her. At least that's what it seemed like. Then the wedding was called off without warning. I tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. So I booked the next flight to London and ended up here, in this attic. It took me a while to find anything good in all of that junk up here. Most of it was just old clothes, broken furniture, and dusty photo albums. But yesterday, I found a box filled with books. They were mostly cookbooks, but there was also this one book that was different. It was bound in leather and wrapped in string, and I couldn't wait to open it. As I did, pages tumbled out and hit the floor. I gathered them up and saw that it was a diary. The first page had the words, "To my darling Evelyn," written on it in flowing script. The entries started in 2002 and were dated every single day until August of 2023, every day. I read about how she met Philip at school, how they bonded over their shared love of history and art, how they laughed until their stomachs hurt. I read about their first kiss and how she lost her virginity to him. I read about how he proposed, about the wedding plans, how happy she was. And then I read about the day her world fell apart. Philip had confessed to her that he was seeing someone else. He said he needed space, that he couldn't give her what she wanted. He said he didn't love her anymore. I felt sick reading those words because I could feel my aunt's pain. I wanted to reach out and comfort her. But the next entry broke my heart. September, he moved out today. I'm all alone. No one understands what it's like to be in my shoes. No one but her. It was signed off with a flourish. I didn't recognize the signature, but it didn't matter. I knew who she was talking about. I knew who it was. I continued reading. I read about how lonely she was, how she spent her days wandering the halls of the castle, how she couldn't bring herself to eat. I read about how she begged Philip to come back, how she tried calling him, but he blocked her, how she hated his new girlfriend, and how she wished she could disappear. Then I read about the days she started to heal, how she began to accept what had happened, how she started taking long walks again and eating meals with her friends. She wrote about how she rediscovered passions she'd abandoned long ago, about how she found joy in small things. She wrote about how she started taking care of herself again. I felt hope. I hoped that she'd eventually find someone new, someone who loved her as much as she deserved, and then she did. His name was James. He was an environmental lawyer who lived in a small village an hour outside of London. He visited my aunt at the castle. They took long walks together. They cooked meals. They traveled. They laughed. He made her happy, and I was happy for her. They got engaged in May. She was going to marry a kind man who loved her, who treated her like a goddamn queen. And then the entries stopped. They stopped in July. What had happened in those 2 months? Where was the wedding? Why wasn't she writing anymore? I flipped to the end of the diary and my heart broke. The last entry read, she reads this at 4:47 p.m. He's behind her. Then under that in smaller, shaky handwriting, don't trust her. I checked the time on my phone. It was exactly 4:47 p.m. A chill ran down my spine. Who was he? Who was behind her? Had something happened to her? To James? Was this diary even real? Or was it some cruel joke played by whoever put all of this here? I turned slowly, but there was nothing there. Whoever he was, whatever he wasn't there anymore. Or maybe I just couldn't see him. Maybe he was waiting in the shadows for me to leave. Maybe he was waiting for me to go downstairs and tell everyone that their beloved Princess Mary had returned. Hell, they probably already knew that I was here. Maybe they were letting me finish the job so I could finally bring my aunt best things to them. But why did he want me to read the diary? What did he want me to know? Did he want me to know that he was still out there, lurking in the darkness? A loud crash echoed from downstairs and I jumped. I quickly closed the diary and shoved it into the box. There was no way I was coming back here. Not ever. Taking a deep breath, I crept towards the stairs, making sure to stay in the shadows. If anyone was out there, I didn't want them to see me. Suddenly, footsteps pounded up the stairs. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. Footsteps stopped right outside the door. I dared to peek out. Empty. Slowly, hesitantly, I opened the door and tiptoed into the hallway. As I did, I heard a voice behind me. Looking for something, princess? I whirled around and gasped. A tall, gaunt man stood in the doorway. His eyes glinted with amusement. His lips curled into a predatory smile. Who are you? I whispered, backing away. You can call me. He took a step towards me. And you can call me when you're ready to play. With that, he vanished down the hallway. Shakily, I made my way to the stairs. As I descended, I heard him chuckle. Don't worry, princess, he called out. He's not behind you yet, but soon enough he will be.
I'm a 22-year-old man. My girlfriend died in a car crash last month. I've been trying to move on, but last night, at 2:11 a.m., I got a text from her old number. I'm outside. I freeze. I look at my window and she's standing there, smiling, but her eyes are all black. She mouths the words, "You promised me forever." Then she phases through my window and steps inside. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. This is a scary story written by our user. I've been performing this story for almost 8 years now, so I don't really get scared of it anymore. But I still get freaked out by the imagery in the last part. So let's jump right into it. Last month was one of the scariest months of my life. I lost my girlfriend Emma in a car accident. It wasn't really her fault. The driver who hit her was drunk and fell asleep at the wheel. He didn't see her coming, and by the time he realized what happened, it was too late. She died instantly. I was the one who found her. When I saw her lifeless body slumped over the steering wheel, I knew that, no matter how fast they drove her to the hospital, there was no hope. It's been a month since then, and I've tried my best to move on with my life. But it's been hard. Emma was more than just a girlfriend to me. We had plans for the future. We were going to graduate high school together. We were going to go to prom together. We were even thinking about getting married one day. Now that she's gone, I don't have any plans. I don't have anything to look forward to. I honestly felt like I might be depressed. I started seeing a therapist. But other than that, I just did my best to distract myself with school, hanging out with friends, and, of course, trying to keep busy online. You know how it is. I was talking to one of my friends, John, the other day, and I told him how much I missed Emma. His response was, "Don't talk about her like she's dead. You know she'll hear you, and that'll upset her." Of course, I didn't believe him. There's no way Emma could hear me talking about her. If she could, then why wouldn't she have done it already? I mean, we were dating for 2 years. She knew every little quirk and habit of mine. She would listen to me ranting about literally anything. But after she died, everything changed. And sure, I understand that. I knew that if I was in her shoes, I would probably do the same thing. Still, it freaked me out a little when she didn't try to contact me or visit me in my dreams or anything. It's been a month. I thought maybe I would finally get some closure, finally be able to lay Emma to rest. I mean, I wanted to miss her, but I didn't want to constantly feel the overwhelming sense of sadness that came over me whenever I thought about her. Then last night, February, around 2:11 a.m., I was awoken in my bed by a notification on my phone. When I picked up my phone, I saw a new message from Emma's old number. I immediately panicked. What does she want? Why was she texting me at 2 in the morning? I tried not to be too surprised because this was Emma's old number. I mean, I never gave it to anyone else. And plus, the phone company should have deactivated it. But I guess they hadn't yet. I quickly got out of bed and walked over to my couch. I sat down and took a deep breath before typing back. I asked who it was and what they wanted. They responded instantly with the message, "I'm outside, let me in." Immediately, I got terrified. I looked over at my window and saw a dark figure standing outside. I quickly pulled the curtain shut and ran over to my desk to turn on the lights. But before I could even flip the switch, I heard a loud bang on my window. I gasped and looked over. I didn't want to see what was outside. I didn't need to. I could already hear the pounding of my own heart against my ribs. I slowly walked over to my window and peeked outside. Standing there in the darkness was the same girl from before. She was smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. I could tell because she didn't blink. Her eyes were completely black, soulless. The girl mouthed something, but I couldn't hear what she said. But then she stepped closer to the window and wrote down a sentence on the glass with her finger. "You've promised me forever." She mouthed those exact words as she wrote them. All of a sudden, a wave of nausea washed over me. The last time Emma ever spoke to me, she told me she loved me and that I promised her forever. But this girl wasn't Emma. So who was she? Was she here to take Emma's place? Was she here to be my new girlfriend? I didn't want either of those things. I told her no. I told her to leave. But the girl didn't budge. She stayed there with her weird smile, staring at me with those black eyes. After a few minutes, she started banging on the window again, louder this time. I backed away, knocking over my desk lamp. In a panic, I grabbed the curtains and pulled them shut, blocking out the view outside. I don't know how long I spent hiding under my bed, but eventually I got bored of her knocking. I slowly came out from underneath the bed and walked over to my window. I opened the curtains and looked outside, but she was gone. I got dressed, left my house, and went to my friend John's. I explained the situation to him and he simply smiled. "See, I told you," he said. "She didn't want you to talk about her like she's dead. And now she wants you to keep your promise and love her forever." I shook my head and tried to explain to him that it wasn't Emma, but he just smiled and kept telling me that it was. When I got home that night, I heard the sound of fingernails scratching against my window. I knew that if I looked outside, I would see that same girl, but I didn't want to confirm it. I didn't want to be right. I kept telling myself it wasn't her, that it was just my imagination. But then she started walking along the windowsill. She was slowly making her way towards my room. At first, I thought I had a chance. Maybe I could barricade the door and somehow stay safe. But then I remembered that she wasn't real. I mean, she was real, but she was a ghost. A ghost who seemed to resent me for some reason. The ghost started phasing through the window. I watched in horror as her body went from solid to translucent. 1 second, she was a normal human being. The next, she was nothing but an apparition. I backed away, tripping over my own feet. I fell onto the ground and watched as she stepped out of the window. And when she turned to face me, I screamed. Her smile was wider than I remembered, and her eyes, oh God, her eyes were filled with so much hatred. She took a step closer. "You promised me forever," she said. Her voice sounded like nails scraping down a chalkboard. It was raspy, hollow, evil. I could feel myself getting weaker. I wanted to get away, but I couldn't. She kept inching closer and closer, and I could feel myself losing consciousness. As her black eyes bored into mine, I felt my soul leaving my body. I was empty. I was nothing. The last thing I remember is feeling her cold, dead fingers wrap around my neck and pull me closer. Then I blacked out. Hi everyone. I hope you enjoyed that terrifying tale. Now that you've made it to the end of this video, I want to share a special message with you. If you're still watching, it means that you've been subscribed to my channel. If you haven't, then please subscribe so you can join us every week for our live streams and for early access to our videos. Also, if you'd like to support us even further, then please consider becoming a member. By doing so, you'll get access to our exclusive server, which is full of fun people. We also do giveaways for members only. Alright guys, that's all for today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. I don't really like pasta, but I love your videos. Can you please make a creepy pasta about pasta? Sure thing. Here's one I wrote for you. It was 1 a.m. and I was awoken by hunger. The kind of hunger that only a 15-year-old growing boy could have. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and got out of bed. Of course, I didn't want to wake my mom or my dad, so I just put on my slippers and snuck out of the bedroom and into the hallway. I knew exactly where my hunger was leading me. The kitchen. As I quietly padded down the stairs, I heard nothing but the hum of the refrigerator and the crickets chirping outside. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, however, I heard a clanking sound coming from inside the kitchen. I froze. My dad works night shifts, so it isn't unusual for me to hear him come in and get a midnight snack. But the way that the kitchen light was on and the clanking was coming from inside made me uneasy. As I slowly pushed the door open, I peered inside, and there he was. Dad was standing at the stove, stirring something in a pan. The light from the stove illuminated his face, or at least, what I thought was his face. I wasn't quite sure because it had been so long since I had seen him. The last time we had actually spoken was when I was 4 years old, and all I remembered was how his voice sounded and smelled. I couldn't remember what he looked like at all. Mom says it's because my dad died in a car accident before I was old enough to form any memories of him. But sometimes, I think she is just saying that because she doesn't want me to know the truth. "Hey, Dad," I said. He didn't answer. He just kept standing there stirring whatever was in the pan. This was weird. Usually when I got a midnight snack, my dad would tell me to stay away from the stove or ask me if I wanted some of whatever he was eating. But this time he wasn't saying anything at all. "What are you making?" I asked. Still no answer. He just stood there with his back to me stirring the pan. I was getting a little irritated now. I was hungry and I needed to eat. So I walked past my dad and into the pantry. I started looking for a bowl or a plate to put whatever he was making on so I could eat it. But after looking through all of the cupboards, I couldn't find anything. I came back out into the kitchen to see what my dad was doing. He was still standing there stirring the pan, but now he was singing. I don't know why that detail is important, but it freaked me out at the time. The song he was singing was obviously Italian, which makes sense since our last name is Italian. And although I didn't understand the words, I understood the tone. It was sinister. My dad stopped singing and turned around. His face was pale and gaunt, his eyes dark and soulless, but his smile was the most terrifying part. It was wide and jagged, revealing teeth that were far too sharp and long to be human. With a terrified scream, I ran out of the kitchen and back to my room, slamming the door behind me. I stayed in my room for the rest of the night, burying my head under my pillow. But every time I opened my eyes, I could still see the twisted smile on my dad's face. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear him singing that strange and disturbing song. When morning finally came, I got up and went downstairs. My mom was sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee while reading the newspaper. When she saw me, she asked, "Didn't sleep well?" I shook my head, unable to speak. She sighed and ruffled my hair. "You'll get used to it," she said. "Used to what?" I wanted to ask her that, but instead I just went to the pantry to get some cereal. As I poured milk into my cereal, I looked over at the stove. To my surprise, the burner was off and the pan was gone. Had I imagined the whole thing? I looked over at my mom, who was still reading the newspaper. Maybe I should just let it go, I thought. But then I remembered the twisted smile and the long, sharp teeth. I rushed to the bathroom and stared at my reflection in the mirror. Was I going crazy? My face was pale, and my eyes were dark with exhaustion. But when I smiled, I could see only straight white teeth. That's when I heard the sound of footsteps on the stairs. I turned around to see my dad walking toward me. He was wearing his work clothes and rubbing his eyes. "Didn't sleep well?" he asked. I forced a smile onto my face. "Yeah, I'm fine." As he passed me, I looked down at his feet. He was wearing work boots, the same ones he had been wearing the night he died, but that was impossible. I mean, it just was. "Morning, honey," my mom said to my dad. "You're up early," he replied. "Can I get some coffee?" "Please," she said. "Sure," he said. And with that, he headed into the kitchen. I wanted to call out to him, to ask him about the smile and the sharp teeth and the song he sang, but I couldn't. As soon as he entered the kitchen, fear gripped me again, and I couldn't move. I just stood there frozen in fear as I watched him walk into the kitchen and disappear. Then I heard the bathroom door opened upstairs, and I turned to see my real dad walk out, yawning and stretching. "Didn't sleep well?" he asked. I nodded, unable to speak. "Here," he said, handing me a glass of water. "Drink this. It'll help." I took the glass from him and drank the water. It was cold and refreshing. And as I looked up at my dad, I could see the love and concern in his eyes. "There you go," he said. "Much better," he added, smiling down at me. And for the first time since I had woken up in the middle of the night, I felt safe. After I finished the water, I went into the kitchen to throw the glass away. As I rounded the corner, I could see my other dad standing at the stove stirring a pan. He turned around and smiled at me. It was the same twisted smile he had given me earlier. With a terrified scream, I ran out of the kitchen and hid in my room. But then I heard the bathroom door open upstairs, and my real dad walked out, yawning. He looked at me and asked, "Everything okay?" I nodded, unable to speak. He must have known I was lying because he didn't bother trying to hide it. He just shook his head and walked out of the room. After he left, I went back to the kitchen. The pan was gone, but there was a plate on the counter. On the plate was a mound of steaming pasta. I didn't want to eat it, but my hunger had returned, and it was all I could smell. As I reached out to take a bite, I noticed something strange. The pasta was moving. I pulled my hand back and the pasta stopped moving. I reached out again and touched it. It moved again. Suddenly, the pasta shot out of the plate and wrapped itself around my arm. I screamed and tried to pull it off, but it wouldn't come off. It just kept wrapping itself tighter and tighter around my arm. Then, I heard the bathroom door open upstairs and my real dad walked out, yawning. He looked at me and asked, "Everything okay?" I managed to choke out, "Help," but it was too late. The pasta tightened its grip around my arm and pulled me toward the plate. I tried to resist, but it was no use. The pasta dragged me closer and closer until my face was inches away from the plate, and that's when I saw it. In the center of the plate was a small slip of paper. I couldn't read what was on it because I was too scared, but as the pasta tightened its grip around my arm, I knew I had to do something. I reached out and grabbed the slip of paper. As soon as I did, the pasta loosened its grip and I fell to the ground. I quickly unfolded the paper and began to read. "This is what you will eat for the rest of your life," it said. And that's when I knew I wasn't crazy. What I had seen in the kitchen wasn't a dream, and my dad wasn't who I thought he was. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out more content. And don't forget to subscribe for weekly creepy